Hello everyone, what's up? In today's video I'll show you how to paint realistic verdigris easily using AK Interactive's new verdigris effect. Actually, hang on, I said realistic verdigris, but that's not quite right. I should have said real verdigris. Why is that? Because this product creates actual patina using copper oxides. The results? Incredible. But getting the best effect is not as simple as following the instructions. So here's my question for you guys. Do you really want to stick with Dirty Down Verdigris, or are you ready for the real thing? So this is the resin lion statue by German brand RT Diorama, which I bought specifically for this project. As you can see, it has some weird striations, which are not your typical layer lines, and that was after sanding. In any case, I wanted to add texture to it to simulate cast bronze, and to add visual interest, so I hoped that the weird lines would go away for the most part. Just like I did on my Malcador heavy tank, I stippled Mr. Surfacer 1200 without any sort of dilution, building up the texture with overlapping passes. I had never done this on resin, so I didn't know to what extent it would work. After all, on styrene, it relies on the product's ability to essentially melt the plastic, whereas here that would not be the case. But as my friend Rick knows, I'm not at all afraid of experimenting, even for a YouTube video, and as it turns out, this time the experiment worked great. In fact, I liked it so much that I decided to give it another pass by taking it up a notch by switching to 1000 grit. Either way, this will be my new way to texturize 3D prints, I'm telling you. I highly recommend that you too try Mr. Surfacer for your next project, and I think this idea of the two consecutive grit levels worked really well. So let's say that's my first takeaway of the night for you. After that, I could have applied the bronze paint directly, to be honest, but you know me, I am a stickler after all. So I got my favorite primer out, and my new favorite airbrush, and I made sure that the line got a nice even coverage. What would happen next? Well, stay tuned. So guys, this is it, the product you've been waiting to check out. Disclaimer, I bought it with my own money, or rather, thanks to my Patreon supporters, and I have no affiliation with AK Interactive. In fact, I'm afraid they are barely aware of my existence. Now, as you can see, this consists of two products, which I believe you can actually purchase separately. The first one is a bronze or brass paint, and the second one is an oxidizing agent, in other words, a catalyst. As you can see, the paint is really thick, so I first used a vortex mixer, which I recently purchased, and then I stirred the paint again with a toothpick. Unlike the pastes that come with the Ammo U-Rust line, which I reviewed back in 2022, the metallic particles in this one are super fine, and the paint has a gel-like consistency that makes it a pleasure to apply by brush. The official instructions tell you to apply a thick coat, but I still removed some paint just in case. As you can see, I did not quite dry brush it, but I applied it gently with an old frayed brush using something similar to overbrushing. I did not expect the paint itself, prior to the chemical reaction, to look this good, especially not over an essentially matte black primer. However, I think you will agree with me that this looks pretty awesome. In this particular case, I wanted the whole figure to have patina, but this finish is so great that having some parts show the original metal without any corrosion would definitely work too. So after letting it dry for a couple of hours, it was time for the science experiment. The AK tutorial in this warns you that using a metal paint well will create surface rust on it, which will add green or yellow rust. Therefore, what did I do? I used two pots to put that to the test, one enameled and one bare metal. To begin with, I took a flat brush and started applying some of the product from the clean, enameled paint well. As you can see, I was very gentle, and I deliberately tried to let the product run down, rather than trying to paint with it, let's say. To my surprise, it looked as if some of the bronze paint was starting to come off, as if the reactive were eaten into the paint. That it would do that when I hadn't actually applied any friction whatsoever was rather disconcerting, but I decided to keep going. Trusting the process, I decided to change gears, and I used the toothpick speckling technique to try and create some more random patches of verdigris. I made quite a mess of my desk in the process, but I thought it would be worth it. Then I turned to my metal paint well, and lo and behold, yes, green rust had clearly formed on it. I gave it a good mix, and I thought, what the heck, let's see what this does. And so, with the enticing promise of tonal variation, I applied it to the lower areas of the lion, all around it. Now, I knew that there was no real world logic to this, but I just thought it would look really cool. As I applied this, I could see some of the oxidation take place in real time. It takes a few minutes to start, and about 2 hours to completely finish, by the way. After that, I cleaned the brush with clean water, and I applied some of the unchanged reactive again, with the potentially crazy idea of deliberately letting it run into the parts contaminated with what I assume is some form of iron oxide. In other words, I wanted to create some blending between the two different finishes. But anyways, here you can see the end result of this first experiment of mine. As you can see, it looks really organic, with real streaks going down the model, blotches in different colors, beautiful texture, and a lot of tonal variation. Overall, I was really impressed. However, the green had overpowered the verdigris, and the black patches were still showing. There is no hint of bronze underneath left, and that I didn't like. In other words, I thought it looked really beautiful, but not the way that I had envisaged. So I made the decision to purchase another RT Diorama kit and try again. And so this is my second lion, as it were, after applying texture to it in the exact same way as before. I should mention that this model was flawless from the factory, as opposed to the previous one. I also primed it the same way to make sure that I did not introduce, let's say, new variables into the process, as I wanted to compare results. When the time came to apply the bronze paint, I did introduce two changes though. First, I switched to a really gentle brush, which I'm sure many of you recognize. This one has soft natural hair. And secondly, I applied a really thick coat of paint this time, and even then, I went over it again. So instead of 2 thin coats, you could say it was 2 thick coats. By the way, this is another statue from RT Diorama, an image of the Virgin Mary, which I must confess I mangled badly, as the cross that she is holding was meant to be more like a staff, but I was convinced that it was a support from the 3D printing process. In any case, I think the statue still looks really cool, which reminds me I will cover the process for the bases or pedestals for both statues, including the stone finish and all of that, but as a Patreon exclusive video. This time I left the paint dry for 48 hours, not just a couple of hours, to see if that made a difference in terms of the paint coming off. And I also applied the oxidizing agent or reactive with a little spray bottle, as you can see. The idea behind this was to make the weathering even more organic by ensuring that the model would not be covered in a uniform fashion. I wanted to create streaks, blotches, and also little patches where the beautiful bronze showed through. As you can see for yourselves, I made a right mess, but in a few minutes, the patina was starting to show already. When it came to the lion itself, I had some difficulties holding the spray bottle at the correct angle while showing the model to the camera, which meant even more mess and spillage, but let's say it was for a good cause. This also meant that there were quite a few big drops which fell on the lion, but I thought this happy accident would also add to the variety. When I was done, I inspected my work and decided to go have a cup of tea, do something else, and come back in 2 hours to check. And so, these are the final results of my second and final round with this new AK Verdigris effect product. I must say that I'm very happy with how both of these turned out. First, let's take a look at that finished Virgin Mary statue. Unfortunately, I don't have a macro lens, but I think that you can make out the beautiful textures of different kinds and the different tones at play. And then we have the second lion statue, which I'm really proud of. I don't really understand why it is that there was so much green on either model this time around, but one thing is for sure. The fact that it appears mostly in recessed areas, where the product clearly pooled, has given me a sort of free shading bonus. I'm also very happy with the areas without any corrosion, as I really wanted to have that variety, like I said before. Now, in terms of the overall experience, ease of use, and so on, I can wholeheartedly recommend this product despite the hiccups or challenges which I explained earlier. The bronze paint itself is amazing, and it's a real pleasure to work with it. The catalyst so far has not allowed me to have consistent, easily repeatable results, but it just seems to me like it's inherently random, which is no bad thing. For some people, that might be a problem, but to be honest, the first principle of weathering is precisely to avoid symmetry at all costs. Needless to say, I need more practice with this product myself, as I've only used it 3 times all in all. Maybe I will discover little tricks later, like using salt water with the Ammo U-Rust, which completely transformed both the experience and the finish for me. Remember this downed ATST? So far, what I can tell you is that I was really skeptical about this product at first, but now I'm a fan. I have since painted 4 much smaller lions and tried what we could call verdigris 4-ways, using 4 other different products. And to be honest, none of them come even close. That comparison will be another Patreon exclusive video very soon, together with the one showing you how I painted and weathered the stone bases of both statues. And speaking of Patreon, this video would not have been possible without the support of my patrons. It is thanks to them that I was able to buy all the paints, all the models, and all materials for this video. To be honest with you, if I had to depend on YouTube ad revenue, well, let's just say that I'd be making verdigris with green tea and wishful thinking. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, guys. And remember, keep it up and weather it out.